Welcome to the talk Inside Continuous Attack Surface Management. My name is Bjoern Schwabe and I'd like to show you some insights why I think attack surface management is actually useless. Now, we are going to start with a little game. The game is very simple. It's like a jigsaw puzzle in which we look at different pieces and try to find the overall picture. Let's start by choosing our first card to uncover. What could this be? Clearly, we are in a city or something like that. As we reveal more and more pieces, we understand that we are in the capital of France, we are in Paris. However, let's look at the picture for a moment. From the picture itself, you can really see everything. You can see the houses, roofs, streets, maybe even some people or cars. Surely you can see the entire landscape. If we think about this, it's no different to an attack surface management dashboard. But even though a picture says more than 1,000 words, it can't answer everything. Example: imagine you are in Paris and I ask you, where are we going to eat tonight? What's the best place to eat crème brûlée? What are we going to wear? Is it going to rain? You won't be able to answer these questions by just looking at the picture. And that's pretty much the most important deficit that I see with traditional attack surface management. The trap you fall in is that you focus too much on what you know rather than what you don't know. Yes, you want to know your assets such as IPs, domains, ports, etc. And often the solutions come with a health status that show you nothing more than vulnerabilities from an automatic scan. ASM solutions' purpose is to allow for a wider scope than a traditional penetration test and should produce less noise than a managed vulnerability scan. In fact, it should also lie in between the different costs of them, while actually being a continuous solution. The space around ASM is becoming very crowded, though, as more and more suppliers join the market each day. Ultimately, all we get though is a fancy dashboard with lots of insights around assets. The problems we just highlighted with the little Paris example are obvious. We cannot answer all the relevant questions with data around assets, and approaching the problem by saying we must monitor more assets doesn't actually provide a solution to the underlying problem. So what do? Well, to make ASM actually useful, we must provide context. If we want to know the best restaurant in town, we look at reviews from other people. If we want to know how to get there, we can use Google Maps. For weather, all we need is to check the weather forecast. With each piece of information, we can make immediate decisions. In other words, we need to know about the changes that are happening all around our digital footprint. This must be a proactive approach. The approach must look into cyber threat intelligence and perform threat hunts to have a clear visibility of what's going on and how it might affect us. Together with the information of our ASM solution, we can then make informed, focused security decisions. Now that we are all on the same page, let me give you some insights to some real-world examples and stories we have. How we are actually able to provide value and what some things really mean. I want to show you an example, what we call the invoice case, a finding that was very real and that we reported more or less recently. I also want to tell you more about what dark web monitoring in this space actually means and why it matters. And lastly, I want to show you what the most common issue is we have to deal with, and you might have guessed it already, it's of course about leaked credentials. Let's start with the invoice story. Here we see a typical example of an invoice that is sent between a contractor and an organization. What you see is not the exact invoice we found during our discovery process for a particular client, but instead a very similar one from a quick Google search. At the top, you can see the contractor's information. On the left-hand side, you see the responsible client and contact. And over the right-hand side, some more meta information around the invoice, such as the dates and order number. In this case, the invoice items don't really matter, but it seems to be about some bathroom-related work. Now let's pretend we want to attack this organization with a ransomware attack. We must gain access to the inside of their network. A phishing campaign would be a good starting point for this. But before we do anything with this information, let's try to validate our finding here. For that, we can do another Google search, and it will lead us to a template that was published by Camden Council. It clearly labels how an invoice must be formatted and what information must be present on it. Well, that's very nice. So now that we have information about the contact, know what they usually see, and have all the data required to start a simple phishing campaign against our target, I think it's safe to say we can proceed with an attack. The interesting about this example is that this is not something an automatic scanner would find, and if it does, it would probably mark it as an info level finding. In this case, the actual personal identifiable information is secondary. I find it more interesting to see how good the security department of the contractor is. Do they even have one? What's their annual budget and what are they testing? Do they do penetration testing on their email servers? We don't know. But in the worst case, we could probably even attack them first and send an email from their official email server. Maybe we could just spoof it. Either way, there are many possibilities from this point onwards. The important takeaway here is that it takes some context to understand if this is a critical problem or an informational problem. In either case, a decision needs to be made. There are obviously many more factors that come into play. Maybe the invoices need to be published. But do they need to be published without any blackening out of sensitive data? It is one more piece of their puzzle to plan and coordinate an attack without actually hacking. Just like everyone else in the commercial space, attackers are also bound by time, budgets and resources. Now I would like to talk about this in the context of demystifying what dark web monitoring means. We look at this in the sense of there being 8 or 9 different levels of getting information about a victim. And the higher the level goes, the more effort is necessary from the attacker's point of view. Actually, the costs go up as well, meaning that if I was an attacker, I want to start at the top at level 1 and want to avoid getting deeper into the higher levels. In fact, I really want to focus only on the first 4, and you will see why in just a second. Let's talk about level 1 and the public web. This is the level that everyone can access and with a few Google searches can get some results. In fact, I'm sure everyone here is aware of the website haveibeenpwned.com. If not, on there you can quickly check if an email has been leaked in a data breach. However, there are also other services like dhash.com that then actually allow you to get the leaked data, such as passwords, phone numbers or addresses. We are most interested in the passwords, so we can run some credential stuffing or spraying. Credential stuffing is to just try the leaked credentials, whereas spraying in this context means to gather all the passwords of a victim and try them on all possible services that the person uses. It's pretty straightforward. The cost of these services are usually around £20 to £30 a month. Why? Because quite frankly, everything you find on there should no longer be valid. By the time the data has gone up all the levels from 8 to 1, at this stage the account should have been walled, meaning the password should no longer be valid. So let's move on to level 2, where we actually go on the dark web. There are many different forums. You might have heard that just recently a forum was seized by the FBI. In fact, the forum was called Breach Forum. As the name suggests, it's all about publishing breach data. Sometimes for money, sometimes for free. People want to get a name in the scene or get a good reputation. We will talk about reputation in just a bit. Either way, it is also not difficult to access this data. You download the Tor browser, create yourself a throwaway email on a free service on the dark web, and you register your account. By the way, this particular forum was seized, and on the same day someone said it will be back online very soon. I think it took a week and it was back online. The only thing accomplished by the FBI was that 3 or 4 people have been arrested. For us as organizations trying to protect us from certain attacks, nothing changed. However, luckily for us as security researchers, also nothing changed, and we can continue to monitor what is being announced on these. Quite often on these forums you will see an announcement of a new leak and some demo evidence getting published, which we then download and review. However, the price can vary depending on the breach itself. Most often though, it's not too expensive. As an organization or attacker, certainly payable. Not that you should go there and buy back your own data, there's no point. But as an attacker, I might not have found anything valid so far. So I want to go a bit deeper. And what I do is I look at some of the advertisements on these websites and other areas of the dark web, and I will see some really good marketing campaigns with videos and very nice pictures for phishing as a service or ransomware as a service providers. What do they do? Well, the name pretty much gives it away. As an attacker, I can go to these organizations and request that they hack for me instead. So I can pay someone to start a phishing campaign against my victim. I can tell them to go as far as conducting a full ransomware attack. However, in the beginning I might just be interested in getting really fresh credentials that I can then use myself. Now that there's some actual work involved in my attack, even though it's not done by myself as an attacker, I need to wait a little bit until the campaign has finished. Not to say that it's obviously more expensive than the previous two levels. Finding someone, on the other hand, is very simple. Let's go back to the term reputation and why some people are very active on the forums I mentioned earlier. This is all about the fourth level. We are now talking about private chats on WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, or anything else really. But it's an invite-only scheme. You cannot just join those areas of the internet. If you deem to be good enough either for selling or buying, then you will be invited. But the trust between each party needs to be there. And there we see the real first level of data exposure to someone else than the actual attacker. Meaning, if you have successfully hacked an organization and stole data, this is where you want to start selling it before it goes out to the masses. The data is fresh and you can sell it to the highest bidder. There are some commercial providers that are in some of these Telegram channels, at least they claim to be. There are many open ones as well that anyone can join. Those type of monitoring solutions usually start at around 20 to 30,000 pounds a year, depending on what you're looking for. I'm just going to throw a quick thought in here. Do you think AI will be invited to these Telegram channels? Would they be a good buying or selling partner? Do they raise the quality of the chat group? Anyway, back to business. These four levels have nothing to do with actual hacking. All of this can be done by anyone on a phone from the beach or pub. After these levels, it becomes technical. You would do the traditional attack path, where you look for known vulnerabilities, just like Nessus, etc. do. Then maybe dig deeper into the assets and look at the recent patch notes to come up with an exploit based on those nodes. Develop a zero-day or worst case have to actually deploy someone on an organization and play the really long game. Either way, up to level 4 there isn't really anything that the automatic scanning and monitoring solutions of ASM can do. You need to have some people, at least for the foreseeable future, that perform threat hunts and work with cyber threat intelligence to know about these. Which brings us to the final point for today, and that is the most common issue we see every month for at least one of our customers. Of course, it has to do with leaked credentials. Luckily, we don't find them every month on a new breach published on those forums. Instead, we see that the data gets re-uploaded to all sorts of websites on the internet all the time. In particular, virustotal.com. What I mean by this is that people download breaches from somewhere and don't trust the file they downloaded. So what happens is they upload it to VirusTotal and the website checks the file with about 50 plus antivirus software solutions to see if there's any virus in there. However, we do get notified based on regex and Java rules if there are any emails or other details in those files that we have to review. We then usually are constrained and cannot take down the data ourselves, which means we contact our clients and they need to send a takedown request to the provider. Let's sum up what we have discussed today. When it comes to attack surface management, we must think about what we want to achieve with it. If we just want to monitor our servers and see that domains are running and do a quick automatic vulnerability scan, it's fine. There are many solutions available. However, to make full use of ASM, it is important to see it in the context by matching it with cyber threat intelligence and threat hunting. It's not rocket science, but it takes time and effort to match the interesting things together, and the future lies in a proactive approach like this. You must clean up after yourself. However, the internet does not forget. You can remove it all, but you must make decisions of what to do next, and the most important factor in this is the most recent and relevant intel you can get and you won't get that by just monitoring assets and their vulnerabilities.